count.
Go. So we should be good to go. All right, it says we are in the corner, so let's rock this, shall we? Athletes, viewers, listeners, and anyone in between, welcome to One with Coach Blu and the triumphant return of our athletic director, Marissa.
I'm here.
It's good to have you back.
Thank you.
It's like you've been crushing the summer with the girls, teaching swimming lessons.
And even today, but we are just now starting to get out a little bit sooner so I can race home and get in front of the camera real fast.
Nice. Yeah, so welcome back. I'm glad you guys I'm glad you're able to be here because running this show is hard.
By yourself.
There's a lot of people that have not been able to join us because it's like the wizard behind the curtain. That's you. So
I multitask sometimes.
You're much better at than I. Welcome everybody. Glad to have you here. A few announcements. Addict to Athletes annual recovery run. We are open. You can register on addict2athlete.org. Love to have you guys jump on the proxy run this year. You can run with us here in I believe it's going to be the Highland
Glen Park.
Yeah.
In
American Fork area.
Yeah, we're just finalizing some things. So if you have registered, we will clarify in a future email to everyone, but it should be Highland Glen Park.
Yeah, and it's going to be the proxy run, which means we'd love for you to register and write on the bib number the person by which you're running for, whether that's someone who's passed away, whether that's someone who's still struggling
with addiction or mental health.
It could be even someone who you're running with beside. And just say, hey, I'm dedicating this run to you. So it's kind of this run has turned into more of an emotional like healing process. Yes. I've noticed, which is kind of a cool thing. So
and this is a run that can be done here in Utah or done virtually. So we would love you to gather wherever you are, wherever you live, with your friends and family to run in memory of someone maybe you have lost. You can get on and get registered for our virtual. And you don't need to be here in Utah. We want you to still join us.
Yeah, we'd love for you to do that. It is one of the primary fundraisers that we do for our 501c3 to help Addict to Athlete move forward in all that we're doing, all the charity that we're able to offer. And jump on there, check it out. And this is coming up this September, Labor Day weekend, correct?
Yep. Labor Day Monday is the day of the race.
Awesome. Good to know. Hey, jump on our website too and scooch over to our online store. We got some cool stuff on there, from the extracurricular recovery stuff all the way up to our official jerseys.
Recreate your life. Recreate. I don't know if you can see it on the
That's
screen.
One of my favorite ones.
I know.
I love that design. Thank you so much, Josh Hansen. You are a rock star. So jump on there, check it out. We have a 4th of July one that's up. You guys can jump on. It could be a little more patriotic.
We have cycling kit. We have just plain t-shirts, but we also have team running jerseys. And please.
Yeah, I actually got a request for someone that wanted a bowling jersey.
Oh. And
a golfing what do you call them? Polo.
What's a bowling jersey? Is it just?
I don't know. I'm thinking like Big Lebowski, right? With like the stripes and like kind of that the 50s vibe, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe that person should send us some pictures of what they would like it to look like.
Well, and I've had somebody request that we get an Agents of Recovery shirt in there. So we have that logo. I just need to, I guess, upload it and get working on.
Speaking of which, today's episode that's being posted on Agents after this, go listen to that. It is a powerful. I was re-listening to it as I was editing it today, and powerful concepts on leadership. Amazing content. I feel so privileged to be able to hang out and communicate some of the viewpoints and I guess some of the content with Brock Bevel and Max Hall. It's a good podcast. You guys are going to want to check that out. So
yes, Agents of Recovery.
Yeah.
One a week. So get on and check that one out if you haven't.
Absolutely. We have some volunteer stuff coming up with some races. Stay tuned to our social media outlets. It looks like we're increasing some content there on Instagram. Looks like there's some cool things that are opening up there. So check that out. And our Patreon subscribers, you guys are rock stars. I want to thank you all for supporting us that way. You're helping Addict to Athletes efforts move forward and getting more content out. And right now online, we have our online recovery program. This is an official recovery program. all virtual and online. And I mean that in a few different ways. There's 3 different styles and tiers that you can choose from on the online recovery program. The top tier includes some audio and some video content, weekly groups with me, and the possibilities for individuals if needed. The second one is the group and the audio visual content. And the third one is strictly all of our digital content. So,
and the top one, the champion one, also includes all of Dr. Paul's Live on Purpose Central resources, and he has a ton. He has all of his positive power up, positive parenting. I think his My Anxiety Answer. And then he also has other individual topics on suicide and marriage and many. I mean, I think he probably has hundreds of different videos like that. So it is the
Live on Purpose Network is huge. That's why we decided to team up with Dr. Paul. And for those of you guys that know him and have heard a podcast, even as recently as last week with the minor league in Savannah, it's great content. And so jump on there and check that out.
He is a child psychologist and has been doing this for years, and he's very good at what he does.
And athletes and listeners, right now, our certified sober coach training is all ready to go. Doesn't matter when you sign up, we can give you some links to start training yourself in the 40-hour course to become a certified sober coach that you can use in your own professional, career paths, or you can open a chapter of Addict to Athlete in your community whilst becoming a professional in the industry. So we'd love to have you guys check that out too. All roads through the website will lead you to those kind of things.
We have substance abuse assessments, everything. So under the resources and personal training.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Marissa, we got several questions here. Last week we did a deep dive on a minor league question. I got a lot of good feedback about going back to the basics, and I think that might have sparked off the first question that we want to address today. And specifically when you address, jumping on and being part of that, and we will talk about our Patreon subscribers and thank them at the end.
Yes.
I want to jump into these questions so we have enough time, but Dr. Paul's Anxiety Answers on Live on Purpose, again, the top tier of what we're doing, is amazing. And he's done a ton of research and a ton of professional gathering of information and strategies and coping mechanisms that can help you. We're going to touch base on a little bit of that right now, because this first question that comes from a viewer says, "Hey, Coach Blu, Athletic Director Marissa, I hope this email finds you well. I have a huge question and I just don't know where to start. How do I find out where my anxiety is coming from? My anxiety seems to be crippling and seems to come out of nowhere. I have a hard time identifying and pinpointing exactly what it is, though. It feels like it's a constant part of my life that sometimes shuts me down to the point where I just am fearful of absolutely everything and everyone. I need help. I would love to get more information and maybe even schedule with Blu." Let's jump into it.
Yeah, not a fun place to be in.
No,
not a fun.
Anxiety. Let's even get down to the basics. What is anxiety, right? So anxiety kind of comes in a lot of different forms, and it's actually kind of a normal emotion to have.
Yes.
It's your brain's way of reacting to stress, right? And alerting you to the potential danger that might lay ahead. It becomes a problem when it never turns off. So there are some things that should bring positive anxiety. It's like, a couple weeks ago, Marissa, you were talking about you working with the youth, and you guys were out doing this high ropes course. And there were some things that are built to kind of push through some of the anxiety barriers and to get them to do things that get them out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
And those are healthy forms of anxiety. You climb up this big platform. You're supposed to stand on a square that's 8 by 8 inches, and then leap to this ring as you are 10, 15 feet off the ground.
Oh, higher than
that, maybe 100 feet off the ground. I don't know. But you get up there and it looks like it's possible on the ground, but when you get up there, perspective changes.
Yep.
And reality kicks in. I remember when you and I, for one of our wedding anniversaries, we went to the Great Sea Base up in northern Utah. What is it? The Tooele area?
Yeah, just south of Great Salt Lake.
And it's this little hole it's warm. It's a warm spring, and
all salt water.
And the people that found this thought it'd be funny to throw some tropical fish in there, thinking that they would die, but no one told the fish that, and so they survived. And they ended up bringing more fish in, even some sharks.
Yeah,
right?
they have some.
We're not talking
sharks.
like Jaws. We're talking like Mako, kind of like these little kind of
a nurse shark.
A nurse shark, yeah. It's Nerf soft, right? Well, I remember when they give you this little half hour what to do, and you put these masks on, and I remember going under the water and thinking, my head's like, what are you doing? Like, this is not normal. You are not supposed to be breathing underwater. And I remember as I went down, I'm like, this is weird. It's very against what the human concept is.
Because we have a tank. It's all scuba diving. We've got a tank and an air mask. And being a swimmer my entire life, you breathe by you breathe in your mouth, out your nose underwater, in your mouth, out your nose. And with scuba gear, it's in and out your mouth with the oxygen. And it was so weird and so scary.
Did it create some anxiety?
Oh yeah. Because I'm like, I'm not supposed to breathe like this either.
Yeah. Just a month or so ago, 2 months ago, I found myself very high in the air, getting ready to throw myself out of an airplane. And the anxiety there was very real. Mm-hmm. And good forms of anxiety also keep us safe. Remember, it's a normal emotion. That's your brain's way of reacting to stress and potential danger. Yep. But what this listener is talking about is when it overrides even common mechanisms of life, meaning like everything has the potential to create danger. Yeah. Now,
well, and this person, the way that they worded it, I don't know who it is, but it sounds to me like this has been a long ongoing thing.
It has been.
And it's usually that case because they haven't been able, or they haven't taken the time to address it earlier. Mm-hmm. That then it's not only just a situational kind of a thing, but it sounds like it's kind of all encompassing, and it's withholding a lot of things because to me, that's, if you don't address it, if you don't look at what's going on, it does get bigger and it does get more debilitating.
Think of it like a snowball rolling down a mountainside, right? The initial snowball could be some kind of fear or something that like, ooh, that's kind of scary. But as you watch it and not address it, what happens? It gets bigger. It gets bigger, and pretty soon it seems like it's immovable.
Yeah.
And I think a snowball gathering, more snow to make it huge is a great analogy on this.
And it also gets faster.
Yeah.
So bigger and faster.
Yeah, because you can't melt it, right? So everyone feels anxious now and then, and worry turns into anxiety, and anxiety turns into fear, and it gets to the point where we start feeling like we need something. Now, here's one of the biggest mistakes that we can make, and that is we seek medication or substances to suppress the feelings of anxiety, and that's a bad thing. Granted, benzodiazepines, these things are and have been designed to take away that anxiety. But the sad thing about it is that's not an end all be all. We should never be on anti-anxiety medications for long periods of time.
Benzodiazepines are not a long-term solution.
They're not.
They're kind of a short-term fix or something to get you in control so that then you can look at and evaluate and work on the issue.
The problem is everyone's taking this and all of a sudden they don't feel good and they don't feel bad. They are just numb. Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that benzodiazepines are the devil's drug because it doesn't, it makes the person taking it long-term, turns them into a zombie to a certain degree. They just do not feel anything.
Well, and I remember working with clients, a few in particular, that had abused benzos for so many years and for so long, even long after their withdrawal, they were still very, very flat. Mm-hmm. They had a really difficult time even being able to feel emotion. And to me, that's one of the greatest parts of life. It's the difficult part of life, but that there is ups and downs. There are highs and lows.
Yeah.
And so it's learning how to, feel that and be okay. Also deal with that emotion as it comes and work through it, not just block it out. But there also are some good medications that are non-benzo that help with anxiety, that can help a lot of the, blood pressure medications. There's some blood pressure medications that can kind of help.
Anxiety has physiological, residual effects on the body, which we can get into. So you're absolutely right. So the other thing too about benzodiazepines it's one of the only drugs, there's only several, alcohol being one, and benzos, by which you can severely harm yourself by just stopping. the withdrawal symptoms from these things are devastating. So we got to be super careful.
And those two together are extremely deadly.
My goodness. Yeah. So let's jump into it. Common types of anxiety. Because people say, well, I have anxiety, but what does that mean? Because there's a lot, right? There's something that I've been familiar with in my own career, which is generalized anxiety disorder. Mm-hmm. There's panic disorders. There's social anxiety. There's all kinds of like different attributes, specific phobias. We're talking like, the things like agoraphobia and our little son Camden somehow has been researching these and starts kicking phobias to us. How old was he? Like 11? Yeah. And he's like, do you have agoraphobia?
And I was like, what? He's giving me a bunch of them. What does that mean? That is the fear of.
Yeah. There's separation anxiety. We see this a lot in children, right?
Yeah.
There's selective mutism even, which is a form of anxiety, which is just shutting down. And I've had clients where they've come in and they've been so overcome, they just sit there and they just stare at you like, I can't speak, right?
Yeah.
And then there's medicated or substance, induced anxiety disorders. So there's a lot here, but let's dive into some of the ones that are a little bit more common. Let's jump into at first, maybe to some generalized anxiety. That's the feeling of unrealistic worry or tension with little or no reason. It just seems to be a constant. A lot of times this comes with some kind of trauma, right? And again, with the snowball analogy, we need to melt it down into what caused it in the first place.
Where that first started coming.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so these kind of generalized anxiety disorders are hard because this means that we're going to have to dig in a little bit. We're going to have to find out what the source code is, what the core issue is, expose it, lessen its degree of power over you, and then move through it. Now, here's the hard part. That takes an awful amount of commitment from you, the person who's experiencing this, which means that we're going to have to talk about the things that you've tried to protect yourself from, which could, to a certain degree, expose and be potential risk for more trauma.
Yeah. And a little, bring on that anxiety. It's a trigger. It's, to talk about those things and to, try to put yourself back there.
Absolutely. So these kind of things too, and I think this is what she's talking about, is what she's describing in this is a generalized anxiety that has increased to the point where she's super worried. I was talking to an athlete yesterday. We had an athlete on the team that suffered a severe loss over the 4th of July weekend. And, even yesterday when I was speaking with her, it was so emotional and traumatic. It brought up some stuff even for me. And so this athlete that was related to, the situation, she said, I have really been super scared about my own kids, the safety of my own children. So we hear stories or we feel like the emotional turbulence from a situation, and then we internalize it to the point where it could happen to you.
Yeah. If it happens to them, it could happen to us, and you start getting really scared.
So here's the thing, Marissa, there's a reason why women typically are more intrigued and geared towards things like true crime podcasts, right? Because it's one of these things, and on so many, I've heard them say things like, a mother's worst nightmare. Well, mothers have some pretty intense nightmares, and a lot of them revolve around their children, something happening to them, something harmful happening to them. And so be very aware, listeners, that media and news outlets, they source code this stuff into your heart and minds with our fears.
Yeah.
And so if it can happen to you, it can happen to me. Yeah. Right? Which in turn starts creating generalized anxiety. And these things really do overtake us. So let's talk about some strategies on how to cope. Right? Let's talk about what do you know, Marissa, about generalized anxiety in general? What mechanisms do you know work? Because I would say the first thing is to get in and seek professional help. Yeah. Right? How important is it to find someone that can help really engage in identifying the anxiety?
Oh, it's extremely important. If you don't know where it's coming from or what's triggering it, that's what a professional can help you do. Sometimes when we're in that anxiety area, we can't see outside of it. We have blinders on, and that's all that's there. So it's very difficult to be able to survey it and, analyze it really well. So having a third party to be able to help you do that is very important. As a rec therapist, to me, it's all about coping skills. It's being able to learn some deep breathing, that you're breathing in through your belly, not through your chest, that you're doing and learning some grounding techniques.
Yes.
That you're trying to be able to just calm, cut out some of that emotion and be able to deal with the emotion as it happens. And a therapist is going to help deal with the bigger picture of the anxiety.
So, and speaking from a therapist perspective too, one of the best remedies and treatment for generalized anxiety is a therapeutic modality called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's treating people for anxiety disorders through recognizing and changing patterns and behaviors and thought processes that lead to anxious feelings, right? And so,
it's going back and it's cutting it down into what's the thinking, then the feeling, and then trying to change some of those thoughts so that you change the behavior and the outcome. Down.
You want to know some home remedies that can help with anxiety?
Yeah.
Exercise. How important is exercise?
It's huge,
right? It's huge because it helps us get out. Well, what if your anxiety is, being judged by people, social anxiety, things like that, right?
Then you find something at home or going on a walk around your neighborhood. You find some
join Team Addict to Athlete. You're going to have a team around you.
Yes.
Exercise is huge. Yoga is a big one they're finding. I've read a little bit recently on some new studies are coming out with reductions of depression and anxiety through yoga. Why? Because of the meditative, body-focused movements. And I'm thinking, amazing.
Well, and a big part of yoga is breathing.
Yes.
It teaches breathing technique. It teaches correct breathing. I've stated this before on many other
I'm so glad you brought
episodes.
This up.
But a lot of human beings have somehow learned to chest breathe.
And mouth breathe.
And we do that. When we do that, we lift our chest and it's all in our lungs. And that ends up, if you're getting scared or if you're moving to a panic attack, that's going to create more anxiety and at the end, hyperventilating.
Well, and when your adrenaline kicks in, that's how you breathe because you need to stand up tall. You need to either quick and run.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly in the state of go, go.
Fight or flight.
You're absolutely right. I read this thing just recently as per recommendation through a friend who talked about reading a book on breathing. And he said that anxiety with kids and with us, when we mouth breathe, are far more likely to experience those issues than if we can practice nose breathing. I had no idea that we had
swimming.
Yeah, exactly. That we had stopped doing that. Healthy diet is a huge home remedy. Getting enough sleep, avoiding caffeine, obviously avoiding other drugs or alcohol. Medications, being cautious of medications, relaxation techniques such as breathing. These are all home remedies.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you guys, there is no magic bullet. You have to be willing to find someone you trust to help navigate this with you. That's why the person that sent this, I responded back and said, that is a powerful question. Thank you for having the courage to do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's trying different things because at some point there's going to be some days that maybe a deep breathing really works and other days it doesn't. So what are some other, tools you can have in your toolbox to try to do? There's one I'm learning a lot more about, which is like ice bath therapy. I'm sure, where you jump in a cold river, you take a cold shower, even just getting ice and rubbing it on your forearm, something like that kind of shocks the system into rethinking about something else and letting that, fight or flight response go.
Yeah. Most people will gain a lot of relief from those symptoms that anxiety brings on if they can work with someone and start this kind of treatment plan, right? And doing so is seeking counsel, specifically after a traumatic experience. That's why EMDR is a huge part of this. A lot of people don't realize the anxiety and trauma hand in hand.
Yeah.
They really do work one and the same. And so things I've noticed with Team Addict to Athlete is that, being trained and certified in EMDR and then noticing, since day one, how much exercise, running, walking helps, being able to now bridge those gaps and to teach this to you, the athlete, is huge. And if this is something you guys would like to learn more of, I'd be more than happy to schedule some time to help do this in a recreational setting and situation, because
Yeah.
I've noticed being out and about helps immensely. Help you understand and develop a healthy lifestyle, to stay connected to others, to not, isolate yourself, right?
Yeah.
And when something breaks or something kind of happens, to not worry, but to actively work on solutions.
It's really important to talk to somebody, even if it's not a therapist. Our minds are very creative. It doesn't matter who you are. They can imagine the worst. They can make the simplest situation extremely complicated, and being able to talk to somebody and get it out, and being able to re-listen to it as you talk about it, is really helpful.
Well, and like Marissa said too, there are other medications beyond benzodiazepines that have proven to help too. And some of these things need to be, explored with your doctor.
Yeah, they're not as addicting. They're not as harmful to your body mostly long term.
Yep.
So
remember, none of these medications are cures, but with the proper, mental health care and physical care, there's a lot that you can do to get yourself into a situation where you and your doctor come up with what's going to, work best for you.
Yeah.
So this is a big one. Remember, there's all kinds of causes. There's even family history, genetics, there's brain chemistry, there's environmental factors.
With people in recovery, when you start getting clean, anxiety is always through the roof. Using substances dulls out and it numbs out most emotions. And so when that starts coming back, it doesn't matter what the emotion, whether it's fear, joy, sadness, depression, anxiety, it comes with a vengeance. It comes in fast and hard and quick.
Fast and furious.
Yes. And your body, because of past substance use, hasn't learned how to regulate it, hasn't learned how to slow it down, and it just feels so overwhelming. And so sometimes it's just going to be time. Your body and brain need time. Your brain needs time to recirculate and reconnect some of the things of how you used to do things and how life used to be when not having substances in it. But you've got to really utilize a lot of different things. And a lot of people in recovery, mostly early on, do need medications. Most people in recovery from substances, doctors do not give benzos to, because they are so addicting.
Yeah.
But we'll try something else to help with the anxiety. But a lot of times in that situation, it really is going to get better.
Right. And in the moment when you're experiencing the anxiety, that's what turns into what we talked about at the beginning, the panic attacks, the panic disorders. It's when you suddenly feel intense fear that brings on that panic attack. And during a panic attack, you can feel things like heart increasing palpitations, sweat, chest pain. You might feel like you're choking, or maybe
a lot of
even
people
having a heart attack.
Yeah, feel like they're having a heart attack.
So panic disorders are different too, because then now this is the physiological part of all this, coming forward. And so if you've gotten to a point where you're starting to feel these kind of attributes in situations, it's time to really get involved and seek some help, because now we're turning into something a little more heavy. And I'm telling you, I have seen EMDR work phenomenal with these issues. Yeah. And so please, be cautious and be wary of all these physical attributes kind of leading back to something that maybe happened traumatic as a kid. Separation anxiety is kind of interesting. I want to touch base on that just because I feel like if we don't get these things taken care of, we will project them onto our children, which will put them into situations where they feel like they can't leave us. And when they do, when they have lives or when they are being kids and beginning to explore, we can imprint this onto our children, by which they will become more, in tune with having separation anxiety.
Even if you're not a very anxious person, like you've already said, I've been back in the water teaching swimming lessons, and I was
going to bring this up because you've seen this hand in hand.
So extreme. In fact, I have one girl this week, 4 years old. The mom just sits right next to the pool, right next to her, and I can't even get her in the water. She won't put down to her face and nose. Like I can get her chin in, then her mouth, but it's taken a long time to even do that. And I only have like 35 minutes with them. Finally, I think it was day 3, mom came. I said, you need to be practicing this at home in the bathtub. Day 3, her mom's like, what can I do? And I said, would it be okay if you just left? And she looked at me like, how dare you, like, what's she going to do? She's already panicking with me sitting right here. And I said, if you're okay with that, if you feel like she'll be okay, whether that's leaving or going, the other side of the pool deck far away. And she went away, and all of a sudden, knowing that mom's not there to just rescue her and help her, all of a sudden I can get her in. She still is struggling a little bit because she's had this, are you okay? Be careful next to the water. But she has drastically improved.
Would you mind addressing, like, the very first time you pointed this out to me was when you were a lifeguard at the treatment center that we both worked at, and you saw something in the moment that proved this to be true in the pool, where there was a mom who came to visit her son. Her son was in the pool.
Oh, yeah.
And describe how that transferred so quickly.
He had been totally fine in the water. It was a teenager, had been fine every single time. The kids would take turns coming like once or twice a week. And then mom was there on a visit, and he was out in the water swimming, and mom came out to the pool deck to get him. And the instant she saw him, she called his name with, the most fear ever. And instantly he like froze and he got stiff. And then he started panicking. Oh my gosh. And all of a sudden he couldn't swim because mom called his name. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. He was doing fine before, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely fine. And it's like mom had trained him. There had been something that, be careful around water. Don't drown. You'll be, you've got to be careful. Even if mom wasn't, maybe their moms do. Your parents project fears of their own onto their kids, and those kids will adopt those really quick.
Yeah. And so be cautious with that. And so I love the fact that this individual is asking for clarification, for some advice. Mm-hmm. I would say, if your schedule permits, let's get you going, because every day that you let that snowball get bigger, it's going to be harder to get in front of it and stop it. Because here's the thing, you get in front of that with the right help and support and understanding, it won't mow you over. That snowball will stop in its tracks, and we will melt it down to its core.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Thank you for reaching out. That's not easy.
No, it's a big one. And again, most of us put these masks on and these personas that everything's okay, when really we're just barely holding on.
Or that it's gotten so big without asking for help that by the time you do, it feels like it's too big and unmanageable. But there's really not anything that is unmanageable that can't be addressed and can't be fixed.
Absolutely.
But asking for help is the first way.
It's a big deal. And, our society says that we can't have these fears and we can't have these anxieties, and we need to tough up and push our way through it. Doesn't always have to be that way. I think being emotionally intelligent enough to be able to recognize this stuff is the very first step in making it happen. Yeah. And I love what Dr. Paul talks about frequently, that I've adopted in my own life and I teach quite frequently, which is whatever problem started that snowball to be created, it is only a giant in your mind. You're bigger than this. It's a giant compared to what you've already done, harder, more difficult, more challenging and scary things. So we've allowed this snowball to become this giant, but compared to what? Yeah. You're bigger than it, right?
Yeah.
So let's give you some help. I hope that helps a little bit about understanding maybe where it's coming from.
Thank you.
The second question, Marissa, comes on the heels of some heartache, it sounds like. Coach Blu, you know of my situation. You know of some of the struggles I've had in the past with my marriage. I've been married to my spouse for 9 years, and I'm just feeling like there is no end to some of the chaos and craziness. I'm curious, when do I know it's time for divorce? Should I get divorced? What would you recommend that I do before we make that decision? Mm-hmm. So this is a hard one, because I would never tell you yay or nay. It's not appropriate. It's not wise. This has to be something that a
decision you have to come to in your time.
That being said, I think we can offer some ideas and understand that relationships are complicated, and marriage, everyone goes through some intense highs and some intense lows. Yeah. And you're asking yourself, well, should I get a divorce? Well, there's some obvious signs that maybe your marriage is coming to an end. But I've also known that marriages who lack communication are typically, good starting points to find out what's really going on.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in the past where I've worked with, this is a female, I'm not going to identify names, but this is a female who's asking, but I've had the same question proposed through men, specifically about feelings of neglect. And they call them, I've been doing some reading on this because it seems like I've been dealing with this a lot in some private practice, which is, they call it the dead bedroom syndrome, which is no emotional or intimate love. And a lot of it comes from the breakdown of communication, assumptions, and things of that nature.
Outside.
And so I do believe that there are some signs, and I want to go over some of these. And if you can answer these for yourself, maybe this is where you start looking at what's coming next. To precursor all of this, do not wait, listeners, to get help when the decision's already been made through actions. And what I mean by that is most people come to counseling or seek help when camps are already established. They're it's
almost too late.
It's the dead bedroom. It's the broken communication. It's the violation of trust, or all these things. And then we're like, we're going to make one last ditch effort to go to therapy or counseling, but you've already made up your mind. You're looking for validation from the counselor, the therapist, to say you need to stick through it and push through it, or no, it's time to leave. It's very unethical, unless there is abuse and physical things of that nature. Well, then it's a no-brainer. But I think there are some signs. Marissa and I, early on in our courtship and early marriage, was referred to read a book entitled John Gottman. Is it the seven
Principles for Making a Marriage Work?
Describe this. I think everyone who starts feeling the waves of change, the winds of change, needs to go out and purchase this book.
I think everyone should go purchase this book, whether they're going through struggles in their marriage or not.
That's the thing, is we were pursuing marriage, and our therapist like, read this.
Yeah,
and there's a reason.
Yeah. So Gottman has done a lot. He has like relationship labs. Most of his psychology and research has been done on communication and relationships. And so he started studying relationships who had been married for long amounts of time, like I think 40 plus years. And instead of identifying what is causing divorces and, okay, it's communication. Oh, they're fighting about money, and then teaching people how to do that, he started focusing on the relationships that were doing well, and what are the keys, and what are the things that are similar in all of those that make marriages work. And so that's how he came up with the book. So it's 7 principles that make marriage work. And there were 7 things that he saw in every single relationship that was working long term that he teaches you about.
And that's the twist, right? To see what's working versus what breaks marriages.
Yeah, there's always 1,000,001 reasons that cause divorce. You don't need to be focusing and addressing that, but what are the things that people are doing that are working?
So he identified these core concepts called the 4 horsemen. And these are attributes that marriages go through when times start getting a little turbulent, when things start getting a little sticky. Do you have those? I would love to go over these and then get into some of the questions that you need to ask yourself before you make that decision, but so that the listeners know what's kind of the Cliff Notes version of what Gottman was looking at.
Yeah. So the other part of the 7 principles he goes through are the 4 communication patterns that destroy trust. Because once trust is destroyed, it's very difficult to be able to just continue in a relationship. And so he goes through what he has named the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So the first one is criticism. You also can call it blame. And it's
what does this look like?
Things like, you always do this. You're never this. So always and never. It's very broad, all-encompassing. You're always a bad mom. You're never around. Is that really true? I don't know if there's many situations where somebody is always and never.
And this is direct criticism, but you got to ask the question, are you doing that with your circle of friends or your acquaintances too? Because we've seen this, we've heard this before.
This can be with parent and child, You're always home late. You never listen to me. Whatever.
I remember sitting in the foyer at church and hearing some of these comments made from people like, oh yes, my husband. And then just these criticisms, and we're like, ooh, ouch.
So the biggest thing is being able to talk about your feelings you're having, instead of locating them outside of yourself with some type of blame, saying you do this, you always do that, you never do this. So it's backing up. First off, don't generalize in conversations like that and blame. Talk about your feelings. How are you feeling about in a situation? That's a way. Number 2 is contempt, and that's about hiding. Contempt is often verbal abuse. It offers no opportunity for joining and resolution. It's intentionally practicing like naming things, and it's a very, it's a lot of verbal abuse in a relationship. It doesn't give an opening for let's work this out, but it's just hiding from the situation, to how to resolve this pattern is coming through intentional practice of naming things that you appreciate about your partner or your relationship. So instead of pointing out, blaming anything or hiding, but just when you notice anything positive, thank the other person, bring it up. Whether, again, if this is a spouse or a child, that you're going to, oh my gosh, thank you so much for wiping down the counters today. I really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. That's a perfect start. Number 3, stonewalling.
This is a big one.
This is another type of hiding.
This is a big one.
Yep. This is where you just turn out, you ignore, you shut down, this is I'm not going to talk to you for a day or a week or whatever. And you say, are you mad? The other person, they just ignore you, don't answer, So
the reason why I think stonewalling is so hard is because then the other person doesn't know. And what do? They guess, and they guess wrong. Yeah. It must be because X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. And that is a very unfair position to put your spouse. I don't care if you're validated in it or not, by stonewalling and trying to put across the agenda of, well, you should know why I'm upset. That is not fair. And so this happens a lot when we feel as though something's happened to us where we feel violated or disrespected or some potential harm has happened. And so stonewalling by having the person guess, only leads to more, I guess, confrontation and possibilities of emotional distress because you don't know. So it's not fair.
You text them and they read it, but don't reply.
Yeah.
The resolution and the fixing on the stonewalling is taking a break. That's okay. People can take a break. You need both partners to get grounded and then, hey, let's talk about this, in a couple hours. Let's talk about this tomorrow. I've always said I hated the advice when you get married that you never go to bed angry. I don't agree with that.
And why not? We've talked about this specifically.
Because usually after a good night's rest, you have a totally different view on things and you can see things differently. You've been able to calm down a little bit and you have a way that you can maybe talk things out easier. So give them that break if the other person needs it. I know a lot of people go, oh, I'm just the one, I need to talk it out. And the other, the spouse is the person that needs a break.
That's happened to you and I so many times where we've both been upset and maybe I've had a valid reason, maybe you've had a valid reason. But by agreeing to disagree in the moment and then retreating to mow the lawn or do whatever, we can come back and be all right, because we've all been in a situation where we've had a confrontation and then we walk away and we're oh man, I wish I would have said it this way, or I could have said that.
Yeah.
Give yourself some time.
Because when you're emotional, you don't think well. The blood rushes everywhere else. It's not in your brain and you cannot rationalize. You can't think clearly. So being able to calm down is helpful. And if you're the person that just has to talk it out and get it addressed now, you're going to have to maybe find some ways to do some calming and relaxation until the other person's ready. It doesn't mean you force them into it, but having can we have a break and we'll talk about it later is a great start. The 4th one is defensiveness, and it's a type of blaming. Its example is it's all your fault. Defensiveness usually escalates conflict. It deflects any kind of shared responsibility. And it just, you're defensive. You're trying to block anything that's coming at you, right? So be careful with it's all your fault. If there's 2 people in a conflict, there's some problems on both sides, even if it is, 100 or 90%, 10%, you can't have a conflict with one person very well. So take your part. And the resolution on this comes through becoming curious about that dynamic of the two people and how you're both participating and what you did and what they did, and being able to be open maybe to some feedback and some discussion and talking.
I love it. I love it. So those are some of the key concepts, but the book goes into greater detail. I highly recommend getting it. So there are some things that you should obviously be aware of. Now, knowing some of the four horsemen and some of the feelings behind those. Number one, I would say, I would say some of the most common signs that divorce is probably on the horizon, according to things that I've read, things that I've seen, having had a mother who obviously did this quite frequently. The first one would be when you start feeling like genuine self-doubt, like you start doubting, like, okay, I have proof, we have situational things, I'm doubting this person is on the same platform as I am. Question those self-doubts, okay? Because you've got to have a little bit of validation behind those. You can't just say, well, he's coming home and he's just isolating, maybe that's me. No. When you start having self-doubt, where you start putting yourself as the mechanism of the problem, there's an issue there, because you may have stewardship in the problem, but you're not the problem. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Number two is that you can recognize that your partner is no longer making efforts, and efforts are kind of the bare minimum. It's the responsibilities. It's the little things. It's kind of like, hey, the kids want to say goodnight to you, or, hey, you seem to be out with the guys every night. When you can realize there's not a lot of effort going on. Okay. And this is after the fact that you yourself have been able to identify anything that you may or may not have been doing to instigate this too. Because a lot of times we get in situations where we look at our poop not stinking.
Yeah.
We've got to be genuine with our intentions. I've been seeing, it's been weird, you guys. I've been seeing a lot of social media posts, specifically on TikTok and stuff, where women are coming out and defending men. We have to stop treating men as if they are, have all these responsibilities and demand so much of them. And, we're emotionally abusing them. And yeah, that's true. But there's also more content to that situation. I even saw one that says, we got to stop teasing our spouse for having, small parts, if that makes sense. And I'm like, you guys, we're getting to this weird spot where I see a genuine demasculation in the society. And
I've seen it in media, on shows, sitcoms. It's always, this bumbling idiot of a husband, and they've really knocked down, the male lead in the family and made him look stupid and unwilling. And
look at if you don't believe us, look at The Simpsons, for instance. Now, what a great thing to measure it by, right?
Yeah.
But when Homer first was portrayed, he was kind of this authoritarian, kind of like this ruler of his domain, which was a little bit out of scope. You saw him choking Bart a lot and just being kind of abusive. Throughout the process, they've dumbed him down to the point where he's this bumbling idiot. Yep. We see it in shows, and I love The King of Queens, but we see it in relationships that way, where the man is portrayed as being dumb.
The woman is controlling and demanding and
it's
picky.
Funny and it's satire, and we get that, but we have to remember that when we translate that into real relationships, well, then we have a problem.
Because they say cut and it ends. And if you're at home all day with each other and it doesn't end, it's not so funny.
Well, so, and for instance, I've seen this within family systems that I've been a part of, even within our own family, where there's been spouses who have treated, other spouses with less than I think appropriate, feedback and content, where it's like, someone's, helping a child, and like, you can't help this child. You don't know what they need. And then there's this weird kind of like wall built between the father and the child. And I think sometimes
only moms know best, and only mom can fix it. And
so I'm curious about some of those things, no longer making efforts and stuff. Sometimes it's because without you knowing it, maybe there have been walls placed there that you didn't realize, those stone walls that you built. Merz, I'm curious. I would like to think and believe, and I hope this is true without preparing you for this question, you and I have a very mutual way of parenting, of spousing. What do you think? I don't know, like, what do you think the difference is there? I mean, they use the spiritual, I guess the antidote is equally yoked, which means that I don't make big decisions without you, nor you without me. We don't have separate accounts or separate, situations. It's like, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. And there's this mutual respect of like, hey, we want to purchase this. Yeah. Let's wait, or no, let's don't.
Well, it goes along with even chores around the house. Are there certain things that are woman's or wife's chores? No.
I learned this a long time ago, though. We talked about that. Yeah.
I mow the lawn and he does the dishes, and other times I do the laundry and he washes the windows. Like,
the only thing that bothers me about that is you say separate the clothes instead of fold the clothes, and I'm thinking, huh?
No, I say you separate them before you put them in the laundry.
So weird. No, you say separate when it means fold too. Here we go. Well, you're not making efforts anymore.
How many drawers do you have?
I have a lot of clothes.
You just hang your clothes up. There's not folding.
And I don't hang them the way.
So separate them into that area of your closet.
But I love it though, because it doesn't matter. And I recognized this a long time ago. I would come home from work and, the house would be a wreck. And all that told me was that you got to be an awesome mom with the kids. I didn't expect to have dinner on the table. I mean, like Bewitched and Darren when he comes home, right? It's like,
if I could,
man, if you could. There's nothing like that. And the fact of the matter is, it's always been that way. Right now, my schedule is that I'm doing more things towards the mid-afternoon and evening. You do things early in the morning. And so things like making the bed, doing the dishes, making sure that when you guys come home, you've got what you need so that you guys can focus on recouping and getting things ready for the next day. And it's like, none of that's like, well, this is your job.
Yeah.
So equally being that way. So, efforts, you'll start seeing those kind of things. There are certain things that I think both husband and wife, I think have to be able to do. But then there's a lot of stuff that they can do jointly or together or independently. Does that make sense?
And there may be things that somebody likes to do, and so they do it more than the other person.
Yeah.
That's fine. But you should never have a standard that this is your job because you're a woman, or this is my job because,
Another thing that I've noticed when divorce seems imminent is that there's less face-to-face time with your spouse. Like, you're noticing that either one of them are just never there. It's, I'm going to my in-laws' house, or we're going on vacation. You can't get a time off, so we're leaving. Or there's weekday stuff where it's like, you're hiding out in front of the TV or in front of the gaming console or whatever. I've seen some TikToks too, where I've seen women come in and like destroy guys, like Xbox and things. And I'm like, there was one that really hit me hard. It was kind of crazy. This girl comes in and she like breaks his console, and she's like, why do you focus so much on this? And he says, it's all that I had. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of problems there, a lot. Him being able to do that as a mechanism of stress release, fantastic. I've done it. There's things to do that kind of stuff. But there's also a time and a balance. So I'm thinking, all right, who's at fault here? Is it her fault for like destroying that? Which I think is kind of extreme.
I'm sure it's both.
Yeah, or is it his fault because he is spending too much time
and avoiding everything else by doing that?
Yeah.
I also, if I remember right, one of the predictors of a good marriage and a successful long-term marriage is, I think he just called it pillow talk. It's being able to talk at the end of the day about how your day was, and having that, like you say, face-to-face time that you're just kind of reviewing what's been going on. And if there's a lot of, I'm too busy, or I go to sleep before you come to bed and go to sleep, and you guys aren't having some of that, even if you do that first thing in the morning, it's got to be at some point every day that you kind of check in and see how the other one's doing. Because I know that there are lives, and marriages that are busy. And I know that there's some marriages that they work on totally different schedules, but there should be that time in the middle where you touch base with each other and kind of talk about stressors, or, a phone call during the day, and you can go through some of that.
Yeah.
If you're just turning to outside friends, family, and not to each other to do some of that, it's going to cause a real rift in the longevity of a relationship.
Yeah. There's situations where you both have unrealistic expectations of each other. Maybe your expectations have become unrealistic. I think that's a big indicator, right? You've decreased the frequency, obviously, of the quality of time, whether that be emotional or intimate. I think that if you recognize that you're not on the same page about your futures, that's a big one. Obviously, we talked about someone stonewalling, and the biggest one I've seen is that there's a lack of respect within the relationship. I think that's one of the biggest ones.
And a lot of that is from previously negative behaviors, patterns that have happened for a long time. So that means, yeah, if you're going to stay together, which is an absolute possibility, that there's going to take a long time to break some of those negative reactions, you know, and you and I have had that different things. I did some of that stonewalling for a long time. And then I got to the point where I want to talk it out and you weren't ready. Yeah. And so it was like we were on different things, but let's discuss it together and work together.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that even when there's been times when I've brought things to Marissa where I'm like, I'm not okay with this and whatnot. Even if she's been like, well, I don't see it that way. There was never, I guess, an increase in defending herself. It was more like, well, help me understand why you're seeing it this way. Yeah. You know, and this is what I've noticed. And my intention isn't to do this, but I can see why you see it that way, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think another, like, maybe last thing on this topic is when you find yourself fighting frequently about stuff from the past, that's a huge indicator that you don't want a future. And what I mean by that too is that I don't think you and I have ever been in a situation where we want to rub someone else's nose in whatever issue we might have. Yeah. Things from the past, even things that I justifiably had brought to this relationship about, you know, before we were married, about some of my addictions and some of the behaviors and whatnot. You know, it's been years since you've even brought up anything about that. You know, there's been things in the moment. I remember when our kids were young and I was super overwhelmed and I found myself just, putting things into perspective that looked good to me, but weren't on the up and up. And you're like, this is looking like something from the past. That was years ago. And so when you find yourself bringing up stuff from the past, that's another indicator that you haven't moved forward and that there's these issues that need to be,
and a lot of times it's because somebody's been hurt or traumatized by something. And that's understandable, but that needs to be addressed so that you can let it go too and not have to keep bringing it up.
So first and foremost, if you're even in the realm of identifying these things right now, get some help.
Blu does marriage counseling.
I do.
He does communication.
And I will be 100% honest with you. I do not pick sides on either side. I do not. I'm very neutral that way, and I'll be very blunt with both people because
he's usually very strong-willed with both.
Yeah, because I've seen both sides, right? And a lot of times that sucks. You want a therapist that aligns with you so that you can have a little bit of a gang. That's not appropriate at all. Yeah. You know, there's been situations where I've worked with single people and then they brought in their spouse and they think that, like, because I know their side of the story, that I'm just going to agree with them. And I'm not one that shies away from conflict. And I think that instead of making you feel good, how about we resolve the issues?
Which is usually going to make both people not feel good.
And if you're doing that, if you're coming in to get an alignment from a therapist, your marriage is over anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this. We can even get into, and I'd love to have on the podcast some folks that have had relationships that are functional after the fact, where they see their spouse as still a very important person in their life. And so I think we might bring some people on there and how they do that. It's a great question. It's a hard one. Go back, listen, grab that book, John Gottman. And
there is a lot of information and resources at the Gottman Institute. So Google it.
Yeah. All right. I know we're running out of time. Do you have anything else on your side?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, athletes, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to all of you who make this possible for us each week. I think that we wouldn't be able to do this without the help of our Patreon subscribers.
Yes, thank you.
You guys have helped us immensely. And, please, all of our bonus content you guys are receiving, you're getting our online recovery program right now. And so if you're having struggles and maybe you want to get a little bit of a taste on what we're doing, jump on the Patreon program. As little as $2 a month gets you all of our bonus content. The tiers that move up from there open up for merchandise, for offers, for deals, all kinds of stuff that are exclusive to the Patreon program. And your Patreon program's helping us create Addict to Athlete to be Marissa and I's full-time job. We want to do this full-time so that we can bring this awareness and this recovery program to you. I want to thank our super fans, Jerem Thurston, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Coach Chris Williams, the one and only Brett Frew, Coach Tara Butson, Steve Riggs, Chelsea Olson, and the Warrior Within podcast and personal development by Sensei KP. Another good outlet if you guys need someone to help motivate you. Our rookie level subscribers, Kenny Roseman, Earl Dyer, and Joe Jackson. Thank you so much to our pro level subscribers, Selena Armitage, my favorite, Gary Thurston, my second favorite, Josh Hansen. You guys are rock stars. Thank you all so, so much. And our championship level subscribers, thank you so much. This is the top tier. Shad and Freya Robinson and the Robinson family, Ron and Dee Loesch and Tracy Whitby. If you'd like to become a Patreon subscriber, super easy. Jump on patreon.com/addicttoathlete to find out how you can become one. Athletes, thanks again. We love to have your questions. Keep them coming. If we don't answer them live on the air, I will get back to you via email and we'll get them answered one way, shape, or form. And until next time, go turn that mess into a message.